Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to In the Growth Space. So excited to have you with us today. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice that it's a little bit different. We are in studio today, and I'm here with my good friend Andy Hall from across the pond, as they say.
It's
Andy,
great to be here.
Yeah,
Thanks
welcome.
for having me.
Yeah,
I'm loving Pittsburgh, and it's great to see your city again. I think it's my third time. So,
and I think it's the first time in the summer, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, you have greenery now.
I was just going to say a little different setup. Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, yeah. So we are here in studio, and a couple of things I just wanted to share with the audience here today, with you. And first and foremost, I want to say, one of the things that Andy and I really truly believe in is the power of the mastermind and the power of being able to have like-minded people come together. And so we've just spent like 3 days masterminding around some business objectives, some business products that we're getting ready to launch. And we thought, wow, wouldn't it be just fantastic to be able to get in studio and actually record an episode of the podcast? And so that's what we're doing here today. One of the things that we thought we would do is just chat a little bit about my recent sabbatical. It's kind of countercultural, and taking 30 days off, it's pretty unusual in today's day and age, especially here in the U.S. I know it may be a little bit different in the U.K., but I know I know that here in the U.S. it's like you take time off. The prevailing thought is, what are you, a slacker or something? So let me ask you this first, and then we'll turn the tables, and I'll let you just ask me some questions. But what is in the UK? What is the prevailing mindset? Because you guys, as I know it, as you and I have talked, typically August is a time when people take some time off. They may take a week, may take a couple of weeks. I know, like in Portugal, they typically will shut down for the month of August.
Which is very different. The European culture is very different to, I would say, the British culture in that space.
You
can go to many European countries like Italy, or you've been in Portugal or Spain. And certainly August, they'll clear out.
Shut down,
which sometimes it's a good time to go to a cool Italian city because it's quieter, because all the residents have gone out to the beach. From a UK perspective, well, I mean, we're always escaping our awful weather, as you know. But the cultural thing that I noticed 20 years ago, I lived and worked here for a couple of years down in Atlanta in Georgia. And that was the first time that I learned that vacation time was very privileged in terms of you didn't get American culture, certainly corporate culture, 2 to 3 weeks off. I became very unpopular quite quickly when I brought my 5 weeks vacation from the UK to the US.
Sure.
So I think we do have this regular sort of vacation culture, and taking some time off, but not 30 days. Not 30 days. When you said 30 days just a moment ago, it just landed, and it thought, that's a long time. So I don't think you would see a tradition of, certainly in the corporate workspace, 30 days off. And let's be honest, as solopreneurs and entrepreneurs now, I know you're challenging me to think about it, and it's an uncomfortable thought for sure. In terms of, can I take 30 days off? Now I know I can. But can I get comfortable?
Will
with
you?
Will I? Can I
get
comfortable with the thought of doing that?
Well, and what's so interesting is that as I thought about this last year, I had the idea because I had seen some other entrepreneurs talking about it online, talking about taking some time off, and not just taking time off, but taking 30 days off. And I thought to myself, wow, wouldn't that be amazing? And I said something to you in one of our conversations.
Dangerous, right?
Yeah, really dangerous. Exactly. And so do you remember what you said back to me when I told you I was thinking about it and I wanted to do it?
Yeah, I think I remember before getting curious about why it was that you wanted to do it. It's like, so when are you going to do it?
Right.
Which has become a bit of a theme of our relationship, right?
Exactly. When are you going to do that?
I've got an idea, so okay, when are you going to go and execute it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing that I remember is like the question was, well, put it in your date book, put it in your calendar.
Okay, right.
And so I did. I did very soon after we talked about it. And yet, as we got closer to the date, I think it was about this time of year, the August, September timeframe when I told you about it.
Yeah, right.
And so I put it in the calendar for, 2023. This was back in 2022.
Right.
And the closer I got, so we got past, Christmas and the holidays and into January, and I started thinking, that's on my calendar in July. Mm-hmm. Am I going to really do this? I honestly, to be perfectly frank, I kind of started to chicken out. I was kind of like, maybe I won't take 30 days. But then I think it was in our mastermind group, it just came out. And I said something like, I've got a sabbatical planned. And I'm like, crap, I told somebody about it now. Now I got to do it.
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things, like for me, honoring my commitments, even if those commitments are to myself, it's really important. It's really probably maybe even to my detriment, but I love honoring my commitments. And if I put something in my calendar, 9.5 times out of 10, I'm there. And unless I'm sick, dying, something, somebody else around me died, I mean, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be there. And so that challenge to me was, I think, really, instrumental in actually executing the sabbatical.
Well, I think we've grown to love the line that if you're serious about something, and I think this is a great point for anybody. If you're serious about anything, in terms of how do you demonstrate your commitment, you normally demonstrate it in one or two ways. You demonstrate it in an old-fashioned way, as we say, in your checkbook. Yeah, you might want to call it your credit card now, I guess.
Yeah, right.
So you've got a financial investment in something that normally creates a commitment. Yeah. Or it's in your date book, as we talk about. It's in your calendar. Right. And I think you and I have become very disciplined around, if it's in the calendar, it's going to happen. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. If I was to take you back, that seed of thought, where did the seed of thought come from originally in terms of, the word sabbatical and the idea? Where did it generate itself from? Yeah. So interestingly, I was listening to another podcast. Right. And I was listening to Michael Hyatt's podcast. So if those of you who are watching or listening, and if you know Michael Hyatt, you know that he is very famous for taking 30 days off and taking a sabbatical. Right. And that's where I got the idea. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, how could I ever do that? I got caught up in the how for a long time. Right. And so that was the first. That's the first place that it started to come into my awareness, is listening to Michael Hyatt's podcast and him talking about it and sharing how the value of getting away, getting disconnected, and being able to just kind of clear your mind for space to be able to think and to dream and to vision for the future. How comfortable was it as a decision once you started to think into it? I know you mentioned mastermind group and being held accountable, but how comfortable was the decision once you made it? Well, I think the decision was comfortable, but leading up to it was really uncomfortable, because I had to think about, okay, what are all of the aspects of my business that I needed to make sure just wouldn't get lost, and, thankfully to you and also to Kimberly, who took over my coaching clients and the inner circle groups that we run. That was a key component in making at least some of my anxiety reduced a little bit. Yeah. And I think the hardest part was, not checking email, not checking social media. Although I always say, in full transparency, I didn't disappear from social media. I did check social media and just kind of scrolled more of as a consumer as opposed to then a creator, because I didn't post anything during the month. So that habit was a little bit, tougher to break. One of the things that stood out for me that you did that was incredibly disciplined, and again, as you did it, I'm thinking, can I do this? And I'm still thinking like that now with your challenge to me that sure. I should consider it, was the out of office email. Yeah. And the out of office email, that when I think I shared something that I felt was important to you that you needed to know while you were away, and the out of office email said, hey, explained the reason why you weren't going to read it. But the other thing that I found really interesting was, I am never going to read this.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
I'm never going to read this.
It's going to be archived. Yeah.
So if this is really important to you, Mr. Email or Mrs. Email Sender, you need to send another email to me on the 1st of August.
Yeah. Well, and I will tell you, shout out to Michael Hyatt, because that template came from Michael Hyatt. Right. Michael Hyatt. And I loved it because it did two things. Number one, it let the person know that I wasn't going to read it. And I set up a rule where it just went into an archive automatically within Google.
Right.
And so I wanted to make sure that people knew that I wasn't going to read it. Right. And that if it was important, then just email it after the first.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is I didn't get too many emails after the first that were kind of a repeat, you know.
Right.
So anyway, but yeah, that's how that came about.
And I've not asked you, have you gone back and looked at any of those?
Nope.
No, really?
Nope, I have not.
That's incredibly disciplined.
No, I haven't. Yeah, I figure, and here that was a new learning as well. You know, it was more, I think, about me taking control of the inputs in my life and not worrying about, like, if I tried to think of myself almost like, and this is no way a comparison, but like, what would Warren Buffett do? I mean, Warren Buffett probably doesn't even see email. Right. He probably has assistants to do that.
Right.
And I thought to myself, well, what would he do? Well, he probably doesn't have email, or if he does, assistants take care of it. If it's really important to me, they will email me back.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that did email me back was a business opportunity, which was really interesting. So, and in the original email, because they took the original email, sent it back, you know, kind of like replied or whatever, and I could see that there was a deadline in that email that was during the month of July.
Right.
Well, this was in August when they re-emailed to see if my availability was, you know, if I was available, if the calendar permitted for this project. So, interestingly enough, you know, even though that deadline, you know, came and went, and I might have missed the opportunity, I really didn't.
Right.
Yeah, I really didn't.
Right.
So anyway, but yeah, so that's how that came about with the email template.
So how was if you think about the journey of the sabbatical and 1st of July, how were the first few days of July, and how were you feeling? What were you experiencing? What did you do?
Interesting, because July 1st was on a Saturday, it felt like any other weekend, you know, so to speak. And what was really cool is on July 1st, my wife and I were able to go to a wedding of a daughter of one of my clients, and it was beautiful. It was really, really cool. So it kind of like set the tone of the sabbatical, and it was kind of like, wow, this is really kind of cool. We hadn't been to a wedding in a long time. Beautiful church here in Pittsburgh, so the first couple of days felt like just any other weekend.
Yeah, right.
Yet, as I got into the first week, I found myself like, you know, nowhere to go, nothing to do. I think there's a country song that says something like that. So the first week felt more like just like a vacation, regular vacation. Yeah. And so that as we got started, it was just kind of like a regular vacation.
And that poses an interesting question in terms of that's just come to me in terms of how much planning did you put into the sabbatical? So you clearly planned to, you know, ensure your clients were looked after while you're away. So you did planning of looking after your business, but did you plan the sabbatical out in any way?
Yeah, I did. And that's for me, that was, as I reflect back on it, that's probably one of my bigger learnings, and I'll get to that here in a second. But prior to the sabbatical, I had made an Evernote document that I started asking myself questions. Like, these are the major questions that I kind of wanted to answer.
Right.
Like, what's the vision of the business for the next 10 years? What's, what do I want to get from the sabbatical? I was kind of asking myself that.
Yeah.
And so I had a list of questions that I was going to journal on. And I had, in true high achiever form, I had all of these, objectives. I wanted to make sure I did this. I wanted to make sure I, had this and got a clear vision of my, my future for the business, for my life, the next season of life. And as I think back, when I do it again next year, I won't have all of those objectives. I may have one or two, but I had a whole list of them. And so
What's the reason you'll do it different?
Yeah, but here's the thing. One of the things that I realized is that even in my time off, I was still doing a lot.
Right.
And I had an objective as opposed to just being, and just being able to be in the moment, be where my feet were.
Right.
Some of the best times that I had on my sabbatical were just like staring out the window, drinking a cup of coffee, sitting on my back deck, and just kind of like staring up into the woods and really just letting my mind, wander.
Right.
And I wished I would have done more of that. And so,
Okay.
yeah, so to answer your original question, yeah, I did. I planned my sabbatical, and,
Right.
and I, one of the objectives I had was to remodel my office.
Right.
And so, so those of you who typically watch on YouTube, and by the way, if you're not watching on YouTube, I encourage you to go to YouTube and check us out on that platform, because we're going to be doing a little bit more on that platform. But one of the objectives was to redo my office.
Right.
And so I did that. And so we've got that repainted, new bookshelf, took some, furniture out, redid it, repainted the whiteboard. So yeah, all of that.
So what else did you do?
Yeah.
In the month of July, that when you reflect back and look on, what did you do, and what was some of the highlights?
Yeah, some of the highlights, I think, for me were just time spent. Well, there are three things that kind of come top of mind.
Okay.
First and foremost, journaling. I took a lot of time to journal. My morning routine was just kind of an extended morning routine, so I was able to take extra time. And while journaling is part of my morning ritual and my morning routine, I was able to just take an hour and a half and write. I've got my current journal is nearly full, and it normally wouldn't be full by this time.
Right.
And so journaling was a really big part of it.
Can I ask a sidebar question to that,
sure.
David? I don't know, have you, with your audience here on YouTube, in the growth space, have you spoken about journaling before? And so when people hear the term journaling, I'm sure many of your audience will go, yeah, okay, I understand it. But if someone's tuned in for the first time and said, what are you talking about, journaling? Yeah,
I love that. I don't know that I actually have, to be honest. Yeah. So journaling, essentially how I do it, and there's a million different ways to do it, but what I typically will do in the morning is open my journal, and I just, whatever thoughts are coming to me at the moment, I just start writing. It's a little bit like I think it's called morning pages. There's a practice called morning pages where you just write stream of consciousness.
Yes.
That's kind of how I do it.
Right.
And I get to a point though when I feel like I'm complete.
Yeah.
And then what I do though is every day that I journal, which is nearly every day, I capture at least three things that I'm grateful for. I capture my gratitude.
Right.
And even if it's simply for the wonderful smell of this coffee this morning,
Right.
Or my senses, to be able to sense and see a beautiful sunrise.
Right.
Whatever it is, I capture those gratitudes. And for me, that just kind of sets a state, and it sets a state of mind.
Right.
And it also releases kind of the thoughts that are captured in my head
Right.
Just allows them to kind of get out on the paper.
So any thought.
Yeah, any thought.
So it's like, must go to the store or must fill up, the car with gas.
Yeah, I got to remember to do this. Right. Yeah, today. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A lot of times, too, when I'm journaling, I will process a challenge, a problem that I'm having. I might, just write about what I'm thinking about it, where I feel like I've got some opportunities, where I have where I'm stuck. Right. And sometimes in writing that, there's a thought that pops into my mind.
Right.
And then that thought can then be the springboard for something else. Much like the story of Turning Point, when I had that thought and I messaged you and that's how Turning Point came around. Right. So I was journaling, when I did that. So
you did more journaling.
Yeah, I did.
So
more
that was
journaling.
One of your perhaps your business routines.
Yeah.
That you would do in a typical business day for you, but
Correct.
You carried on that discipline.
Yeah.
While you were away.
Yeah, and I think that to me, my morning routine and my morning ritual, I'm incredibly disciplined with that. I think if I look at my life, that's one thing that I know it's kind of like gives me some stability.
Right.
Even when I'm on vacation, even when I was on the sabbatical, right. I had a specific routine that I went through, and that just helped kind of set my mind and set my day. So I continued those practices.
Right. Anything significant came out of that journaling that you could share publicly?
For sure. Some of this. I mean, being able to record in a podcast studio as opposed to over Zoom or remotely. Yeah. That was one idea that came to me while I was in journaling and in my sabbatical. Right. I would say the other thing too is I spent one morning just specifically thinking about the vision for my life and for the next phase of business and what that might look like. And so one of the things that came out of that is that I get lit up helping emerging leaders. And in that vision and the journaling process, I really realized that I loved helping emerging leaders because I was one. Right. I was one. It's been a long time. Yeah. But I also had a dad and a business partner. He was my business partner who helped me, but he didn't really have a process to help me grow.
Right.
I saw him and I was with him, and so I could visually see what he would do. Yeah. But I didn't have anybody say, hey, here's how you think about this problem. Here's how you surround yourself with people that can help you to think differently, think better, think beyond yourself. Mm-hmm. So that came from the journaling, right. That vision of expanding the emerging leader inner circles and all of our inner circles, to be frank. Yeah. And that came from that journaling, right. That journaling time. So cool. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing when you let your mind go and you allow your mind to imagine the future. It's amazing what can happen.
And you've just triggered a memory of one of the reasons I think you wanted to move into the sabbatical space was you used this line, I think, of where you're currently at in life.
Yeah.
And a significant birthday around the corner.
Exactly.
You wanted to use this for thinking into the next chapter of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that was one of the main what's, if you like, of wanting to do the sabbatical.
Yeah, it definitely was. And, so this fall, our birthdays are a day apart, which is pretty cool. I have a significant birthday. I turned 60 in October. And it's amazing how those significant milestones create an opportunity, at least in my mind, to almost reset and become very intentional. In my mind, I'm thinking, at 60 years old, look, I don't know how much time I have left, but whatever time I have left, I want to be really careful to use it well.
Right.
And I want to be able to use my gifts and my talents and what I feel like is my purpose here on earth.
Right.
To do, you know, I'm a man of faith, as we've talked about, and I spent a lot of time praying during my sabbatical and really sensing what God wanted me to do and where He wanted me to invest my time. You and I talked just this week about, you know, saying yes to certain things and saying no to certain things, and that's not easy, you know. I mean, that business opportunity that came, I said no to that. Yeah. And yet they came back, and I there's a piece of it that I'm going to say yes to because I had some availability.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. But isn't it interesting how when you set something, then it's like, okay, here's the test. You know, 101. Let's go try this out. Let's see if David's really serious. Right. You know, give up a significant piece of work.
Yeah. One of the other things that you and I have been blessed to know each other now for about, I think it's seven or I don't know, it's 7 years or 8. But, I know what a family person you are, a family man that you are.
Yeah.
And one of the things that again stood out for me, having known a little bit of the journey of your sabbatical, was somewhere you went with someone significant in your life.
Yeah.
Which I think there's a story behind that, because you've done that with other significant people in your life. I think.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about where you went and who you went with, and what that experience was like, because I know from catching up with you this week, it was pretty cool and pretty significant what you did, and seeing the photographs on the phone. And
gosh, it really was. Thank you for asking about that. So I went to Colorado with my youngest son, and I had a practice of taking my children on a trip. It started with my oldest, Megan. And I took her on a business trip with me, actually. Oh, right. And it was out to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I had this thought, well, you know what? As they're growing up, and I think she was about 16 years old, and I thought, you know, there's an important skill I think that kids need to have, and that is navigating an airport. So what I did then is I had the intention, and I did this with Megan. And I would navigate the airport. When we were flying out to New Mexico, I would talk through what I was doing. Okay, honey, now I'm looking at the board. I'm checking in. I'm making sure that our gate is still the gate that they said it was. We're going to go to the gate. You know, just kind of talking through the process. And then on the way back, I told her this ahead of time. I said, on the way back, you're going to tell me how to do it. Right. And, you know, we walked into the Sunport in New Mexico. That's what they call their airport. And I basically said, sweetheart, where do we go? Right. And so she had to navigate the airport. And from then, I took each one of my kids on a trip. Right. And so this trip, I had not taken Aiden, my youngest, on a trip. And so he mentioned something a few months ago about wanting to, you know, go out and do something that was kind of adventurous. And so,
like his dad, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I started thinking about that, and we were talking one night at dinner, and I said, hey, what if we went to Colorado, you know? And I was talking about the Via Ferrata that we had done, that I had done with my other son, my oldest son. And he said, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. I said, well, let's plan it. And so we planned it and put it together. So he and I went out to Colorado. And a Via Ferrata, for those of you who may not know what a Via Ferrata is, make sure that you go out and Google it. But it's a traverse typically across like a mountain cliff face. Right. And it's just an iron handholds and footholds, and you are clipped in because there's a cable that typically will go along the wall as well. So there is some safety, but you know, you're pretty high up and pretty exposed. And I showed you those pictures, and I think I don't remember your exact words, but
I remember seeing the original pictures of your trip with your oldest son.
With the oldest, yeah. That was a little bit more exposed than the one we did just this last month, but it was still fun. So we did the Via Ferrata, we did some zip lining, did some rappelling, and did a heck of a lot of hiking, and so much fun, so many memories made, and you know, did the same thing, navigating the airport, and being able to have him navigate it back was really just a beneficial beneficial time, not only just from a practical standpoint, but man, just from a family bonding, perspective. Yeah. Each one of those trips, I have specific memories from each of the kids, and so fun.
What was the specific memory of this trip? Because I mean, again, I've seen lots of photographs, and one of them stood out for you?
Man, I think I will tell you. I think the one that sticks out, other than the pizza. So shout out to Bojo's in Idaho Springs, Colorado. Oh my gosh, awesome pizza. So if you ever get to Idaho Springs, get to Colorado, go to Idaho Springs. Bojo's pizza is just to die for. Aiden and I loved it. Oh my gosh, did I ever show you that picture?
No, you didn't show me that one.
I'll show you that picture when we're done.
No, you showed me the sort of those types.
Oh yeah.
And swimming in glaciers and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and that probably is the thing.
Showed me the healthy side.
Show you the healthy side and not the tough side. Yeah, but I would say that the thing that does stick out to me is the hike that we took to the glacier.
Right.
It wasn't a long hike, but we had to get, there was some significant altitude change. And what was really cool is we got to, first of all, see this beautiful glacial lake. And then we actually got to see there's this glacier and there's still snow in this mountain kind of valley. And we got to go out and, stand on it, and we took some pictures of that. Right. But what was interesting is, and it's kind of interesting, and as I reflect back, I don't think I thought about this until just now, but Aiden had a watch that had an altimeter on it, and that altimeter, basically told us, how high we were, and I think we were at like 10,998. Right. And I remember saying, "Oh man, come on, we've got 2 more feet in us, don't we?" Right. And so. We scrambled up, some rocks, and we got, I think we got to 11,017 or something crazy. But it's kind of like, I thought about that and I thought, wow, there's something in me that has this achiever, and I always want to kind of make sure that I hit certain marks. Right. I don't know what that is. Yeah. But it was kind of interesting.
The life lesson there, right?
Yeah. And of course, as I said that, Aiden looked at me and smiled, and he's like, "Yeah, we got that." So, it was kind of cool. But that, I think that moment, you asked me about like what was the moment, one of the moments that stood out. And I think for me, that was one that stood out because we got a chance to sit on a rock at 11,000 feet, look out over this glacier, just view this beautiful vista. And I just remember my son saying, man, I could look at this forever. If I lived here, you couldn't get me off my front porch. Right. And I thought, wow, isn't that cool? And just those moments, like you just want to bask in those moments. And I think it was then that it hit me that, wow, if we aren't in our moment, if we aren't living life to just be, we can miss stuff, and it wasn't about taking great photos, and that was cool. I did take some photos, but I also just kind of sat there and just kind of took it in. And, even to this day, I mean, I can visualize that scene because I was there. I was in the moment. Yeah. So when I go back, if I want to visualize something, if I'm meditating and I want to visualize a scene that's really serene, I got it. Yeah, our minds are remarkable to be able to remember those kinds of things. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, hey, look, it's the middle of August while we're chatting. It's 2, almost 3 weeks on since you back to work.
Yeah.
What's the over the last couple of weeks? What's the reflections on July 2023 and the learnings? What you might share with your viewers and your audience about why they should potentially think about putting this in their
calendar.
Book.
Yeah. I think first and foremost, I think there's so much value in just getting away. I was actually talking with Cindy, my wife, about this last night, that I think too often Americans especially have this idea of hustle and grind. And I think that she even said she saw something on the news recently that was talking about Americans don't take their vacation because they're fearful. They're fearful that their job won't be there or whatever. And I thought, man, that's a sad state that we live in. So I think the first thing I would say is it's worth it. Right. Even, okay, so not everybody can take a month off. I get that. Right. Yeah, that's cool. But can you take 2 weeks off? I mean, I think, can you? Yes, you can. will you?
Sure.
Is the other thing. So
even in corporate America, you can take 2 weeks off, right?
Absolutely. And I would say that if you're not taking your vacation, first of all, you're missing out.
Yeah.
Because it's time away that allows you to be more creative. It allows you to almost reset and just be able to actually enjoy life. And so as I've gotten back to work and kind of into the flow of business, I specifically have put some new parameters and rules around my calendar, like how much time gets in between, like my coaching clients.
Yeah, right.
How much reflection time after an inner circle group, so that I can capture what was said, what I'm thinking, what significant items came up in that particular group, and so it's also been time. I put time in my calendar based on the vision that I've had and journaled about. I put time in my calendar to be creative. I've got blocks of time where I can write, where I can blog, where I can think about these podcasts and think about what will add value to our listeners and the audience, and perhaps the emerging leaders that are watching, or even our executive leaders who are watching. I think that's really important. So you asked about kind of what's happened since I've come back. I've really been very methodical about my calendar,
right?
And I've really been methodical too about just making sure that I have space. That's kind of was my word for the year: space, spaciousness. I didn't actually know why, but I felt like that just was the word that I needed to kind of live into. And so I'm adding a little bit more space into my calendar and saying no to a heck of a lot more.
It's clearly an iconic word for you, bearing in mind we are talking about in the growth space, right?
Exactly.
Space is clearly a significant word in your life, I would say. Yeah. Question came to me when you were talking about, look, surely anybody can take 2 weeks off. Yeah. And my mind sort of fast forward in terms of, well, why don't they?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's many reasons why they don't.
Mm-hmm.
The question that came to me was how do you think your coaching clients will benefit? How do you think your elite inner circle will benefit? All of the emerging leaders that you work with, how do you think they might benefit from David, taking 30 days out of his business?
Yeah, I think they would benefit by seeing that it can be done.
Right.
And I think that there's oftentimes I like to do things and prove that it can be done. Right. Okay. I think there's something in me that is like, if there's a challenge, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. So I think that if I'm thinking about, your question about how will they benefit? Well, I think they'll benefit to see that it can be done. Your circumstances, if you're watching this and listening, your circumstances might be different than mine, but you can still take time off and you can still be very intentional with your life. And so I think they'll benefit by knowing that there's a way that's different perhaps than they're living their lives and their businesses today. But I think the second thing, and maybe this is maybe even more important, is that I think by having me refreshed as a coach, as a leader of our elite inner circle, where we have, executives from some pretty significant companies leading significant companies, they've got me that's recharged.
Right.
They've got me within a different mental space. They've got me helping them to navigate those challenges in a way that's fresh and maybe with a new perspective that I wouldn't have had I not taken that time off. So
what's the difference between David from an energy perspective from 29th, 30th of June to the person that came back on the 1st of August?
Oh man, I feel like I have more energy, but I'm focusing that energy.
Right.
I took a lot of time. That was the other thing I did, is I really took a lot of time to rest. I normally am a pretty early riser, really early.
Yeah.
I didn't force myself to do that, and so I allowed myself the rest. Typically went to bed at the same time, but just got up a little bit later.
Right.
And I think so. You asked the difference between then and now me And I think that's one of the things that I think I'm refreshed, I'm recharged, and I think I have a new focus and a new focus on my purpose for my life.
Right.
And that includes the people that I help in our inner circles, in the emerging leader inner circle, for example. And, I have some new ideas on how to reimagine that particular program. So,
right.
Coming into 2024, this is one of the things that you and I have been talking about.
Right.
How do we like morph that program and our other, like our elite inner circle program? How do we create more value and help other leaders see the value in being around other leaders? And so I think that's one of the other differences too. Because I'm recharged,
yeah,
and I'm focused. That's the difference, I think, in me.
What evidence, if any, is there from your family? I mean, I know two of your boys still live at home. Obviously, Cindy. Have they noticed? Did they notice an almost a tired and exhausted David in June versus a refreshed, dad and husband now?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Right.
I've not asked him that,
right.
But I don't know. I'm not sure how I know how to answer that question. However, I will say that probably Cindy might be noticing some differences just in how I'm structuring my day,
right.
how I'm approaching, even driving. I think just being able to be a little bit more calm behind the wheel.
Right.
That's the other thing. I mean, here in the United States, I think our drivers just drive like nuts, man. When we were in Portugal, oh my gosh, it was a whole different, way of life. And so I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I don't know if they've noticed or not, but
okay.
If they're watching, maybe they can comment in on the YouTube channel and see.
Yeah. Certainly, as one of them's editing it for you. Right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
You used the words 2024.
Yeah.
Which is clearly still a few months away. But
right.
What will be the difference in for David and Impact Leadership and viewers and listeners to In the Growth Space? What might 2024 bring? As a result of what you've gone and done?
Yeah, so I think fewer programs, so to speak,
right?
But more intentionality. And what I mean by that is we're going to really focus in on helping emerging leaders to grow, and the only way that we can do that is to have their leaders recognize that when their people are growing, that their company is going to grow. And I think that just by virtue of us focusing on that spectrum of leaders to be able to help them to know how to handle the human element of their businesses, I think that's going to be the difference in 2024, because we're going to come alongside organizations that are looking to solve that problem. It's no secret. There's high turnover. Mm-hmm. It's a different job market.
Yeah.
In 2024, we don't know what it's going to be like, but right now, there's not a lot of. Let me rephrase this. Job seekers can find just about any job that they want. In the labor market. Let's just I know there's some nuances that are changing, but what's going to hold a worker, an employee, to an organization? Well, it's going to be when that organization realizes and pours into them, that realizes their value and pours into them and helps them to grow and achieve everything that they want, so that the company then can achieve and grow and achieve everything that they want. And so I think that when leaders are able to recognize that, they'll be more inclined to see the value in investing in their people, from a coaching perspective, from a peer group, a mastermind, or emerging leader inner circle type of a program. So I think you asked the question of, what is 2024 going to be like? Well, it's going to be very focused on being able to come alongside organizations that value and align with what we see as a really, really important aspect of business in 2024 and beyond.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah.
You mentioned emerging leaders.
Yeah.
I know you're also passionate about elite level leaders, C-suite leaders, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, business leaders.
Yeah.
Did any of your sabbatical thinking take you into a space of what their biggest challenges might be and how David and Impact Leadership might be able to solve them in the future? Solve those particular challenges?
Yeah. You did, actually. One of the things that surfaced for me as I was thinking about the people that we serve, the companies that we serve, is one of the things that is happening right now is there are a lot of leaders who are in that baby boomer generation that are beginning to want to, move into that next season of their life.
Yeah, right.
And they are not feeling super comfortable about the people that they have in their organization. So from that senior business leader, that founder, for example, one of the aspects is succession planning and who's going to take over when they leave, when they move into that next chapter of their life.
Right.
So that's one thing that kind of surfaced. Another thing that actually surfaced was, I talked about succession planning, but not just the senior leader. I mean, succession planning is really important for, any leader within an organization. It doesn't have to be somebody in the C-suite. I mean, if you've got, let's say, for example, a director of project management, let's say, they need to be thinking about who's going to succeed them when either they move on to another opportunity or they, they move up and they get promoted.
Right.
Who's going to take over for them? And so if they're not building the strengths within their team and within individuals and identifying, there's a real gap there. And so that's one of the things that we're focused on with the inner circles.
Cool.
Yeah. So
will there be a 2024 sabbatical?
Yeah, it's in my calendar.
Right.
Yep, it's in my calendar.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm excited.
When in the calendar?
It's in July.
Okay.
Yeah, July again. I love the month of July.
To get it on tape.
Yeah, right. We're recording it here. Yeah. It is in July for 2024. Right. So I'm excited about that to do it again, and and I'm also really grateful for people like you and people like Kimberly who stepped in and helped out, and it really helped me to be able to look at my business maybe in a little bit different way too, where I can rely on people who are in my life and who I've collaborated with, because that's another real big learning, is that we don't have to do it ourselves. Matter of fact, we can't do it ourselves. And I think that that's the thing that, because I grew up in an era when that was the prevailing thought, that I've fallen into that trap on occasion. And we were even talking about this week, and this, the value of having others and other perspectives around us is so valuable. And so and just being able to take some time off to be able to reflect and be intentional, man, so important.
Would it be fair to say you couldn't have taken the sabbatical without being surrounded by the right type of people?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. I would have had to, it would have impacted my clients.
Right.
And I wouldn't have been able to have them, serviced and taken care of. So, yeah. So
how was, if it's okay to ask another question.
Yeah, sure.
How was collaborating and surrounding yourself with the right type of people supported David and Impact Leadership over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years? And where have you found those people?
Yeah, gosh, that's a great question. So how has it impacted me? It has changed my thinking and expanded my thinking in ways that, because I didn't know what I didn't know, And when I have other people asking me questions, it opens my mind up to, oh wow, I hadn't thought about that, or giving me perspectives that, hey, have you thought about this? I can't get that on my own.
Right.
So that's the first thing. That's the biggest impact I think it's had.
Yeah.
And then what was the second?
Where do you find those people?
Yeah, where
because you know, to a degree, you're a solopreneur. You and I collaborate together on some things. But there's not a team of 5 or 10 or 15 people working for David, is there? So where did you find those people?
Yeah. So I was really intentional. So throughout probably the last 10 years of my life, I've been very intentional about getting in spaces where there were other people who valued the same thing that I value.
Right.
You know, family, you know, life, the growth mindset.
Yeah.
And so I got into those rooms. I invested in myself.
Right.
I you know, you said earlier that, you know, the date book or the checkbook. Yeah. Well, I spent a significant amount of money to be able to be in those rooms and to be around other mentors, to help me, be able to build relationships with those people. So, you know, starting with the John Maxwell team, and then, you know, the empowered living community, being around Paul Martinelli, and, you know, the exchange community. So I'm a part of the exchange community, and that's an amazing group of people who really believe that that we can facilitate and unlock the collective wisdom and the collective intelligence of groups. So I was very intentional about being around people like that, and being very intentional about investing in myself.
Cool. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, important message.
Yeah.
Really important message.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I got one more question.
Yep.
What's the sabbatical question that I haven't asked that I should have asked?
Oh, yeah.
What have I missed in terms of sharing
Yeah.
your sabbatical experience with all the people that watch on your YouTube channel and tune into your podcast normally?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. What haven't you asked me? Gosh, I don't know. I think you've covered a lot. I think, you know, one of the I guess the only other thing was my overarching goal for the sabbatical. As I think about it, that was one of my questions. One of the questions that I asked myself is, really, what do I want the next season of my life and the next season of Impact Leadership to look like?
Yeah.
And you know, going back to my word, it's space.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I wanted to be able to have space, but impact. It's really the reason why I named my company Impact Leadership, because I wanted to have an impact on people, and I wanted to have an impact on organizations, but not necessarily just, you know, in silos. I want to be able to, you know, we're whole people, and so I wanted to be able to have that impact. And so my goal was, what does the next season look like? And so the next season looks like being very intentional, saying no to a heck of a lot of things, and yes to the things that really align with our purpose. Right. So so I think that's what I can think of.
What's the importance of saying no? Because that's difficult as a solopreneur, entrepreneur, right? When someone offers you a financial opportunity. Right. What's the importance? What have you gained from saying no to that significant opportunity a few weeks ago? Yeah. So what I've gained is not only just the freedom to say yes to the right things, but knowing that I said no to something that really truly wasn't aligned with my strengths and my purpose. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you, man. Thanks. Now I know what it feels like to be on the other side of the table. I'm not usually the one being asked the questions, but thank you, man. Thanks for being here, and thanks for allowing me to, or, you know, being able to extract from me some of the lessons that I've learned from the sabbatical. And thank you for watching, and thank you for listening. You're going to see some different things like this here on In the Growth Space.
we probably will come back to the studio. I don't know, next time you get over here.
It won't be far away. We're here for Summit in November.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Maybe we should be intentional about being back here.
Matter of fact, I'm glad you said that. So just so that you know, we are going to have an Inner Circle Summit. I probably won't announce the date at the moment because we don't have it locked in, and I know from our collaboration, I better not do that. But we are going to have an Inner Circle Summit. Most likely, it's going to be the last week in November. And it's probably going to be towards the end of that week. So, just you might want to pencil it in and put a little hold on your calendar if you want to be able to come to Pittsburgh and have one of those kinds of events where you'll be surrounded with like-minded people that really want to grow and really want to learn. But more than anything else, we hope this has added value to you, and really hope that you will like and comment and share this podcast, because we want to reach more leaders. We recognize that it's really all about people, and people growing will not only give a much more fulfilled life, but they'll also be able to provide value to organizations and the people that they serve and help that organization grow. So that's really what all the In the Growth Space is all about. So, hey, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in again. Until next time, be well and stay in that growth space.